Hello and welcome to the channel. Here is another presentation of intumescent white cataract in which I am going to demonstrate double rhexis and phacoemulsification by stop and chop. The patient was given peribulbar block and he developed bulbar conjunctival chemosis. I have made a small nick and just trying to drain out all the fluid which is under the subconjunctiva. By this time, one side port has been made and the other side port has been just created. So left eye of the patient and I am sitting temporally. Now is the time to put some trypan blue to stain the anterior lens capsule. I'll wait for a few seconds and now the trypan blue dye is being washed off. Here I am using HPMC, which is HVPFS, which is high molecular weight HPMC, and I'm not using any sodium hyaluronate or anything because I'm going to do the rhexis through the side port, and this viscoelastic is going to help. Now with the help of a 26 gauge bend needle cystitome, a flap is raised and now I am going to use a microcapsulorhexis forceps 23 gauge and I am going to make a small rhexis first. Although there is not much of fluid, still I am going to decompress the bag because many a times I have seen some few peripheral fluid pockets in these kind of cataracts and eventually they lead to a rhexis extension. So here's a small rhexis being completed. Now is the time to just decompress the bag, and here I'm using a bimanual irrigation and aspiration. Slowly, if any fluid pocket is there in the capsular bag, I'm going to remove it. Any entrapped fluid or anything. Some superficial cortical matter is being aspirated out just to clear out the bag. Here I am putting HPMC and the cannula is directed away from the small rhexis because I don't want to push in viscoelastic into the capsular bag, and a small nick is being made using a micro scissors. A tangential nick is made. Purposely we should avoid making a radial nick. Now again using the same micro capsulorhexis forceps, a secondary larger rhexis is being initiated by holding a small capsular tag. These small capsular tags are easy to maneuver, easy to hold, and there are less chances of any rhexis extension. It is more or less like a whirling type of capsular rhexis or a snail track capsular rhexis in which we have got a small capsular rhexis, long small flap which is easily maneuvered over the cataractus lens, and here we are towards the end of the rhexis and the rhexis has been completed without any issues. It is about 5.5 millimeters approximately, well centered. A 2.8 keratome is then used to make a posterior limbal phaco incision. First, the bevel of the blade is up, enter the cornea, say about 1.5 millimeters, and then we enter the anterior chamber. The phaco handpiece is then used and a groove is being made. The phaco power used here is about 60 and the bottle height is about 80 centimeters. Vacuum is about 75. Two or three long grooves are made carefully, and after reaching sufficient depth, I am going to just divide the nucleus in two halves. Now here I am taking a blunt Sinski. The nucleus is not very hard, it is more or less of a soft density, and here I am making two heminuclei. One heminuclei is then rotated in proper orientation, phaco is buzzed in and two pieces are being made. One piece came out of the capsular bag, it is now being emulsified. Now the phaco power is 65, vacuum is 250, bottle height is 100 centimeters. This is a Venturi based machine. The aspiration flow rate is automatically controlled by the machine. Again the second heminuclei is rotated and in proper orientation, phaco is buzzed in, another piece is being created. Small pieces then picked up and emulsified in the central safe zone. It is a good idea to emulsify the nuclear pieces in the central safe zone, because in that area we are maximum away from the corneal endothelium at that point, considering the anatomical shape of the cornea. So the final piece is then picked up and slowly it is emulsified. It is a slow surgery, not much vacuum is being used to avoid any surge, because this is a total cataract, and these kind of cases you might experience posterior capsular tenting or weakening of the posterior capsule, thinning of the posterior capsule. That all can be observed in many cases. So the nuclear emulsification is completed, and now I am using a coaxial irrigation and aspiration handpiece. Whatever epinucleus is there, it's been aspirated slowly. The vacuum now is around 350, bottle height 110 centimeters. And gradually all the remnants of the cataract are being aspirated out. For subincisional cortex, I am using bimanual irrigation and aspiration, because the anterior cortical fibers were more towards the equator of the capsular bag, and it was slightly difficult with the coaxial irrigation aspiration handpiece to go beyond the rhexis margin subincisionally. So bimanual irrigation aspiration is a safer option to remove the subincisional cortex, although one can do with coaxial as well, as normally we all do, but many a times bimanual comes in handy. So here I am demonstrating the use of bimanual. Hands are switched and the remaining cortex on the other side, the cortex below the side port has been aspirated, and I am trying to remove as much as cortical matter from the capsular bag. Sometimes in these total cataracts we find cells attached to the posterior capsule, under surface of the anterior capsule. We get some sticky cortical fibers which are difficult to remove. Still, with the bimanual things become very easy, because bimanual can be taken below the anterior capsular rim or below the capsular rhexis, and big chunks of cortex which are there at the equator can also be removed with greater ease and safety. To remove the cortex, one has to visualize well, one has to see well, and now is the time for the intraocular lens implantation. The capsular bag is filled with viscoelastic, and a single piece monofocal aspheric hydrophobic intraocular lens is being implanted into the capsular bag. One haptic goes straight into the capsular bag, and the other haptic is now being dialed. Here I am removing the viscoelastic which I have pushed into the capsular bag, first behind the lens and now in front of the intraocular lens. You should always try and remove maximum viscoelastic from the eye so as to avoid any post-operative IOP spikes in the near post-operative period. Lens is well centered, the capsular rhexis margin is well covering all the sides. In this case I was not very happy with the incision, probably I had a wound burn, and one 10-0 nylon interrupted suture is being placed. The ends are now being cut. And the knot is being rotated inside. This suture will be removed after 7 days. The patient did well, and hope you like the video, and thank you so much for your patient hearing.